Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about my literacy intervention program that I've been working on this semester. So to get started, I want to talk a little bit about the learner I've been working with. So I've been working with Violet, who's a second grader at Eastlake Elementary School. I knew her a little bit from my subbing days, so I was able to really get to know her inside and outside the classroom and worked alongside her family and her own teacher as I was developing this intervention plan. So before we got started earlier in the semester, I gave an IRI, the inventory reading. I really tested her skills, gave me an idea of where she was at. I knew that she had been reading under grade level to begin with, but wanted to see kind of where she was struggling, where she was excelling, and then created an intervention plan based upon that. So based on the reading inventory that we did, she was really showing a lot of weakness in her phonemic awareness skills, identifying and reading digraphs. So those sounds that are paired together, so the sh things along those lines. Struggled to create rhyming words during inventory, and really struggled through her reading and comprehension. I think in part this was due because she couldn't read the words, was struggling with decoding, and couldn't even really get her sounds out. So it made her very frustrated and upset. As I just mentioned, she was easily frustrated with seeing looking around the room, not being able to pronounce things really got her upset. She was kicking her chair, asking when things were going to end. Could she get up from the table and things along those lines? Based on her scores and also talking to her parents, her teachers, I wanted to create an intervention plan that addressed two main findings. So before we hop into how we did the intervention and the highlights, I wanted to talk a little bit about the two main factors that I focused on. One was her social and emotional calming. So she really showed those exemplified moments where she was upset and frustrated. So she was seen kicking her chair, looking around the room, asking when things would end. So based on her scores, I was looking at what we could implement to kind of help calm her body and mind. And this was through different ways that we're going to talk about. So her social emotional calming techniques and then the phonemic awareness I decided upon because looking at the research, every piece of literature is connected. So you have the fluency, decoding, um, comprehension, and things along those lines. So I wanted to start at the main root cause. And then from there, we can go forward and talk a little bit more about getting her on grade level and things along those lines. So looking into the rationale, so during the reading inventory, she had a negative attitude, a lot of self-doubt, always asked to stop reading, kicking her feet, looking around the room. And honestly, she was brought to tears during some of it, which broke my heart, but it showed me that we had to really put an intervention into place that she could have a safe body and mind so that she can quickly turn off those emotions and really just focus to stay on task. So one calming technique that we were implementing through our intervention was the balloon breathing and then also visual cue cards. So balloon breathing is easily performed, especially it's age appropriate for second graders. They can sit in their seats when they come across something hard or a frustrating moment. They take that big, deep inhale in, they fill their stomachs up with that breath, and they're able to let it go. The balloon is a really important part of this because it's very easy for young children to visualize it and they can do it very quickly. Say they're in a test, a quiz, something just at their seat, not letting others know what's kind of going on around them. And in terms of visual cue cards, I like to, and you'll see on the next page here, that a cue card is able for her to visualize, to see what's happening and use strategies and stay on task. So this can be presented in front of her, whether it's on her desk. We also use it just during on her table while we were doing the intervention, so she can create that calm body and mind. So during the intervention, the tutor, which was myself, can introduce the techniques and teach them before observing them in the future. I can kind of see where she's at. Both later we'll talk about formative and summative assessments. This is just two visuals. Talk about that balloon breathing on the left-hand side. So thinking of your belly as the balloon, letting it rise and fall, and following that breathing rhythm. This is super helpful for little kids to do, and they're also able to visualize it. On the right-hand side is that visual cue I was talking about that could be located on her desk, and it was during our sessions. So taking those small, deep breaths, smelling the flowers in this case, counting slowly, or giving her another option to relax her body. During the intervention, I was using this as a way to calm her as she was going through her reading. I'll talk a little bit later about how we assess this and what that actually led to in the future. So talking about phonemic awareness. So basing the rationale on the informal reading inventory. She struggled severely during the word reading inventory. She was reading below grade level. She couldn't really get past really that kindergarten, first grade level. She was not able to present a lot of the diagraphs during the IRI. She'd implement her own words when she couldn't comprehend things. She does have a great and fantastic imagination, but this did not allow her to read fluently. Super tough for her to decode words and was below that second grade level. So this led me to the idea to start with the phonemic awareness, as this would be her base, and literacy is all intertwined. So once she gets that phonemic awareness down, we then can go on to the decoding, the fluency, and the text comprehension. So specifically looking at ways we could do this, I decided to use worksheets. So I would use a worksheet on the first part of our session, really to teach. So I want to focus on three parts of phonemic awareness: digraphs, rhyming words, and sight words. So I would use worksheets that I can pull from different books or anything that I can find that will help with these specific strategies. Because she was reading so under her grade level, I really thought it was important to start at that kindergarten, first grade level to master that and then move on to the second grade learning targets. At the beginning of the session, we would work together to fill out the worksheets. I would teach her certain things based on these worksheets and wouldn't ever assess her until after going through it. Another way that I could do this, and I implemented it through the intervention, was using our family. So, of course, our sessions were fundamental to the intervention, but really going beyond that, I want our family to get involved. They could play games with her, make things fun outside of just the strict and narrow sitting at a desk. So, having family members, tutors, friends, having that reading mindset. So, becoming creative with it. Maybe you go to the grocery store and do something, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So during the intervention, the tutor can work alongside the learner, and use worksheets. And it's supplemental materials until we get up to that grade level. Just examples here are some of the worksheets that we used during our intervention. On the left, really working through those diagrams. So it showed the picture of obviously the little boy in the shower on the top left. The SH would be placed in the boxes for the sh sound. I would work through this with her, and then later on in the session or the week, I kind of test her on what we've learned, implementing, kind of working together, higher order questioning, understanding her thinking process. And then on the right hand side, we have the rhyming word sets of two. So, for example, with this, I would use the word clock. She'd have to come up with the bottom, what rhymes with it. Obviously, it's sock here, but understanding the words as we're sitting together, why do they rhyme? Looking at that OK or the KC there. An example of the literacy game. So this is just an example here that the family implemented while we were working through the intervention. There's many others that I gave them as resources. So this is rhyme time shopping. The family could go to the grocery store with Violet as they're going through. They could point to something in the cart. So say it's a Pop Tart. Maybe she has to come up with something else that rhymes with Pop Tart. Or in this example, it was legs, like chicken legs, things along those lines, making it fun, letting her be creative, and really putting that passion back into literacy as she had such a negative attitude to start. And then once the intervention is kind of underway, we got to work together for a few sessions, but really those assessments. So I want to focus on formative and summative. Formative, of course, is that informal piece. It's something that happens during the learning, so you're able to adjust. Summative is a little bit more about the end of the learning. You're testing the full knowledge. In terms of the social and emotional component for observation and collecting data, that's really more formative. So I wanted to observe her, well, maybe while she was doing independent work, is she able to use those breathing strategies that we implemented or her visual cue cards? I found it super important to collect data in a very structured manner. So we would be using the ABC data. So that's a trusted and true practice in education. It's an antecedent behavior, a behavior, and a consequence. I'll show a picture on the next page exactly what that looks like. It's collected over time, but really I'd be using this probably every session with her, and I wasn't up until this point, to describe in detail what was happening and then decide, do I have to reteach those strategies or how can I help her while we're learning? In terms of a summative assessment, it's the knowledge behind that self-regulation. So after we've talked through it, I would give her maybe a test or a quiz on a weekly basis to understand her knowledge. Why does she have to do this? Is there a reason she should be calm? Really understanding why she's doing those things. Both forms of assessment are used to gauge Violet's use of the taught topic. So why is she doing this as an intervention strategy, and where else can she use this in her life? And that's going to come into play when we talk to her teacher. This is just an example of the ABC data sheet. So it has that time, setting, antecedent behavior, behavior, consequence. So really being detailed in our observations here to use it if we need to reteach a strategy or comment on what she's doing well. In terms of phonemic awareness piece, again, the formative and summative assessments. For the formative assessments, using that observation so we're able to jump in while we're working together on that first worksheet as I'm teaching, still observing what kind of questions is she asking. This is coupled with those higher order thinking questions. So as she's going through, when she's using that consonant sheet for the digraphs, why are you using the sh sound for shower? What is the phonics behind it when she's moving her mouth? Things along those lines to help her understand why she's doing things. And then for formative assessment, also allowing the parents to have a jotting notebook while they're playing these games. If they notice anything, is she still struggling with those rhyming words? Maybe if they're playing the rhyming game in the grocery store. For summative assessment, really looking into those independent worksheets that will be graded. So after we work together on that first teaching moment, the second part will be an independent worksheet. It won't be the same exact thing, but it would be one that she's able to do based on what we've learned. I want to make sure that it's graded and we're having that progress monitoring using a strict rubric. This rubric will be shared with her teacher as well as her parents to keep everyone in the loop to monitor progress on a weekly basis. So both assessments are super important here, and we've been monitoring them here on out. But I think as we go forward, having that strategic alliance between all three of the people who are in our life is super important. Again, these are just examples. So the worksheet on the left is something she would do on her own as a summative assessment after we went over it, of course. So this is going to be her here is going through the rhyming, the cat, the blueberry. She would then have to, this is going to be the syllables, how many syllables are in the word cat, and so on. The journal on the right-hand side, just showing a little bit of a picture of what parents can use. Last but not least, the parent-teacher communication. So this is really how everyone's going to work together with the tutor to come up with the best plan after intervention. So assessments are really the key piece here. They provide the data to be communicated from the tutor to the parents or the teacher. The teacher needs to be on board and know what's happening because who knows, they may be teaching a different way and you don't want Violet to go into the classroom and not understand what's being taught there. It has to be an inclusive environment. Parents should be introduced cheat sheets to help with all strategies. This is, again, going to be a lifelong learning process to help her get up to speed. So it's helpful that everyone's on the same page and not all terms are that easily digestible. So really having that parent communication. And then, of course, teachers and tutors can work together to create external resources. So think about Google Classrooms or maybe Power School learning pages to have additional practice in a fun and easy place for parents to access outside school and tutoring hours. It's essential that everyone is on the same page so that Violet feels a nice sense of community, but also help from everyone in her life, inside and outside the classroom. Looking back on the intervention and the highlights and the findings of my focus learner Violet, the two main targets again were those social, emotional, and phonemic awareness. It was based upon our results of her inventory that we took at before we started working together. And of course, those testimonials really driving home the teaching strategies through the worksheets, as well as strategies she can use to calm her body on her own, balloon breathing, as well as those visualization cues. The calming strategies can really be applied anywhere throughout her academic or social life. So she's able to use that as she goes forward for that frustration, and that can help her sit in one spot, calm down, not kick her chair as much. Phonemic awareness is at base level, which she struggled with, and literacy lends itself to each part. So the decoding, fluency, reading comprehension. So while she's working her way through, again, we started at that kindergarten first grade level. Once she gets up to speed at second grade, she can advance on and start working towards those targets in decoding, fluency, and reading comprehension. Overall, it's been a pleasure working with Violet through our intervention strategies and seeing as she's progressing. In the future, I hope we can keep working through and get her to that same reading level and understanding the phonemic awareness as well as her social and emotional strategies. Thank you.